Introduce Dr. Neetu Mohan.
Yeah.
So Dr. Neetu Mohan is basically an associate professor of ophthalmology and a senior consultant in glaucoma services, Arvind Eye Hospital, Chennai. She did her MBBS from JIPMER Pondicherry and her MS from Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Trivandrum. She's also done her ICU Clinical Sciences Part 2. She's done a fellowship in glaucoma at Arvind Eye Hospital, Madurai. She's actively involved in resident and fellowship training since 2006, and she has participated as a faculty and presented posters in national and international conferences. She has published in national and international peer-reviewed journals also. So over to you, Dr. Neetu Mohan. Please come up with your slide share and present your case. Dr. Neetu?
Yeah, I'm trying to share my slides.
Yeah. Till the meanwhile, till Dr. Neetu is sharing, Dr. David, is it okay with you? Will you be able to stay for a while on this webinar? Because apparently,
I plan to stay until the normal end time, and then I have to leave at what the scheduled end time. So if you go way over, then I can't stay. But I'll stay until it ends, until the regular end.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been at meetings in India. I know sometimes they go a little long.
Is my screen visible now?
Yeah, it's visible, Neetu.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Neetu.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to present here today. So my short case presentation today is about a 39-year-old female patient who presented to us with right eye burning sensation and severe pain and photophobia.
Neetu, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, your slideshow is down on.
Okay. Is it fine now?
Yeah, it is fine. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So she gave history of fever with upper respiratory tract infection about 3 weeks back, for which she had taken some over-the-counter medications. The details of this was not available with her. When she presented to us, she was on topical anti-glaucoma medications, and she was also on and off acetazolamide for quite some time. She was put on systemic steroids for a short duration for joint pain, which was again discontinued after a few days because of the suspicion of ocular hypertension. So vision was 6/6 and 6 both eyes. Anterior segment examination remarkably showed intense pigment dispersion in the anterior chamber and significant conjunctival hyperemia. So this could not be captured on slit lamp photography, but there was intense pigment dispersion with pigments moving around in the anterior chamber. Pupils were mid-dilated at this time because she was on homide. We assume that it is because of homide at this point of time. IOP both eyes were 36 millimeters of mercury. Gonioscopy showed open angles with intense hyperpigmentation of the trabecular meshwork. So disc was normal at this point of time in both eyes with a cup disc ratio of 0.6 and NRR healthy. Blood investigations were normal. So our first diagnosis was pigment dispersion syndrome, but we still could not fit her really into a diagnosis of pigment dispersion syndrome because there was no Krukenberg spindle. She was acutely symptomatic with severe photophobia. There were no mid-peripheral iris transillumination defects, and there was no concave iris configuration even on gonioscopy. The second diagnosis we considered was uveitic glaucoma, since that was another common diagnosis in bilateral cells and pigments, but we could not actively see white cells. What we saw was only pigments, and there were no keretic precipitates. And we also sought a uvea clinic opinion, which ruled out posterior uveitis. So ruling out these two, and then with some considerable literature search, we came to the diagnosis of bilateral acute iris transillumination syndrome. She was started on topical anti-glaucoma medications, and she was put on tab acetazolamide whenever her IOP spiked. And we followed her up over a period of 3 weeks. So over 3 weeks, her visual acuity maintained at 6/6. IOP right eye was 32 millimeters of mercury and left eye 22. Pigments in the anterior chamber reduced markedly, but these pigments started getting deposited in the angles, and the angle structures were totally obscured by about 3 weeks. There was a small area of iris transillumination in the left eye by about 3 weeks, and cup disc ratio in the right eye seems to be progressing over time. We started her on maximum topical anti-glaucoma medication. This was her fields at 3 weeks from presentation, and this was the OCT. So considering that the right eye IOP was persistently high, a right eye trab with MMC was done 4 weeks from presentation. So BAIT and BARDI, BAIT being bilateral acute iris transillumination and BARDI bilateral acute depigmentation of the iris, are relatively new clinical entities with about 79 cases of BAIT reported so far. So BARDI presents with acute onset pigment dispersion in the anterior chamber, depigmentation of the iris, dense pigment disposition in the anterior chamber angle. BAIT, in addition to the features of body, also has iris translumination defects due to loss of iris pigment epithelium, pupillary distortion with or without formation of posterior synechia. Etiology is still unclear. There is some implication with a virus or probably an upper respiratory tract infection, but most of the cases have had a course of moxifloxacin, that is oral or parenteral moxifloxacin, before the onset of symptoms. So what is believed is that the equilibrium which is maintained only on oral or parenteral moxifloxacin, which maintains a high amount of moxi in the anterior and posterior chambers, is required to cause the onset of Bardy or BAIT. So precautions and rehabilitation in sensitized patients, moxifloxacin should be discontinued or avoided in future. Rehabilitation may be needed for intense photophobia in these eyes. And in a nutshell, a young middle-aged phakic women with history of URI, with or without moxifloxacin intake, redness, pain, photophobia with good visual acuity, intense pigment dispersion in the anterior chamber, and trabecular hyperpigmentation with iris transillumination defects, pupil semimydriasis, and ocular hypertension. A possible differential diagnosis could be BAIT or Bardy. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the case is open for discussion. Dr. David, can you offer your comments on this case? How common do you find this case of BAIT is? And what do you think, particularly when Dr. Neetu said that the concentration in the aqueous and in the anterior chamber with topical is about 2.2 microgram per ml compared to the oral, which is just 0.1. But this patient developed BAIT with systemic moxifloxacin. So what are your comments, sir?
Yeah, so I've never seen a case. Pradeep, have you seen a case?
Yeah.
I've never seen a case. So I think this is an extremely rare condition. And I know people are attributing it to certain medications, and it may be true, but there have been other antibiotics that were taken that were also causal, quote unquote. And I think it's hard to know causality in such a rare disease. So this could be some weird form of uveitis or some viral thing, as you note. And so I think you just have to control pressure in patients who present with bizarre high pressure conditions. And so that's the main focus, to prevent the nerve from being damaged. But I've never seen it.
Okay. Dr. Chandrima, your inputs on this case? Have you come across any of this case called BAIT or Bardy?
Yeah, first I'd like to say that it's a very interesting case and it was very well presented. And actually, I haven't, or I'd rather say maybe I have missed a case because this is so rare. It's more common in the European Union. And if you look at literature, actually, it is as early as 2004 that it was reported in literature. But then, you know, there have been sporadic reports in the literature, 2004 followed by 2009 and 11, then again 17, 18, 19. And I think India reported BAIT and Bardy somewhere around 2018. So what she presented was really well presented, but what I would do little differently would be that maybe I would do a viral serology, because the people who actually reported it in 2011 was the largest number of series, 26 cases, a tongue twisting name, Tungal Tungkun, better calling them TT et al. So they actually did not rule out viral etiology there. They definitely said that it could be due to moxifloxacin. We all know that fluoroquinolines actually do have a tropism for the melanin pigment in the iris. But then having said that, they did not rule out a viral etiology. So I think IgM antibodies and IgG antibodies, and they did find that IgG antibodies, though many were not raised, but then they did find an IgG antibodies. So maybe a viral serology would be another option of doing it. And about the concentration in the aqueous and the, when you give moxifloxacin topically, actually the concentration in the aqueous is higher, but when you give it orally, it's equally high in the posterior chamber as well. So that is the reason oral moxifloxacin is more dangerous for this than topical moxifloxacin. I just saw a question, Dr. Vijay ma'am had said that is a AC tap, like, you know, would it help? So actually, I did not find it in literature, but the whole thing is that it's more of a iris pigment dispersion kind of a thing. So I haven't seen anybody who has reported an iris tap of the anterior chamber. Definitely, it could be tried to see what it is. And the other thing is that the take-home message would definitely be that, you know, patients who do have this kind of disease need to be told about it, explained about it, and so that in future they are careful in taking moxifloxacin. And that is about it.
So one thing is sure that if we get this type of pigment dispersion into the anterior chamber and there's a raised IOP, we have to ask the systemic history of any moxifloxacin which has been taken, because this is something really a new entity which is very useful for all the ophthalmologists across our country.
Yes.
Dr. Venkatesh, do you have any this comment on the serology to be viral serology to be done? And since this case was there in Arvind and it has been discussed, what is your output on this case?
Yeah, most of the points I think Chandrima has covered, but it's a very rare thing. Like what you said, I think we have to keep in mind. Now there are so many reasons for drug-induced glaucoma, and this also has to be kept in mind for a pigmentary changes. But there's something interesting which we have observed, and also Dr. Ratnam in Madurai. There's a condition called vitiligo iridis, where you have a similar depigmentation of the iris and you get a pigmentary glaucoma. And these patients had smallpox to begin with when they were young. Smallpox was eradicated many years back in India and several other countries, but we tend to see a pigmentary glaucoma when they were aging. So we also saw a series of cases with vitiligo iridis, and also, so a lot of virus are there which can be caused. So we have to still keep moxifloxacin in mind as a differential diagnosis. And it will be good to rule out any treatment with moxifloxacin when we see a patient like this. Thank you, Amit.
So moxifloxacin being the most commonly used drug in our country nowadays. So it is very important to ask the history of drug intake if you see any pigment dispersion into the anterior chamber. This is the take-home message I guess we all discussants are trying to say. So thank you, Dr. Neetu, for presenting such an excellent case.